It just means pain is multifactorial. It's influenced by a number of factors, more than just mechanical aspects. And I would say for too many years, we've focused on the wrong mechanical aspects and the idea to the detriment of people. And I believe in like simplifying the mechanical aspects so that you can start to address other areas that influence pain as well. Like don't get caught up on like your foot posture and your knee caving in 1 centimeter and your anterior pelvic tilt. That's like the wrong road to go down. We shouldn't be focusing on those things. That's the thrust of the course. Yeah.
What should we be focusing on, do you think? Where are we missing the mark?
I mean, so if I have pain or someone I'm working with has pain, let's say, they're a runner and their knee hurts, we would look at like really general, like simple things like, are you just doing too much than what you're ready for right now? It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with how they run or even how much they're running, but there could be something going on in their life where they just can't tolerate the running stressors at that point in time. So the question is, do they have to back off and do a little bit less for a while, or do they have to add something else in their life? Meaning that could be recovery, that could be looking at their sleep, that could be their diet, where you ask big questions like, how can you be healthier? That sort of idea. It doesn't mean like they're running too much, like in general, like doesn't mean if they're running 50 kilometers per week, they might have to back off to 30 for a while. But in 6 months from now, and for years later, they could be running 50, 60, 70. There's not something about their body that can never run 50 to 80 kilometers. There's just something about their situation at the time. And we don't always know that means it's too much for them right now. So that it's things like that you'd focus on.
Why would their situation influence, let's say if we sort of zoom in on the knee, so everyone is having knee pain, why would their situation influence that pain?
Yeah, we don't know, but thanks for making me look dumb. We really don't know. It's that multifactorial. It's like saying, and I apologize for everyone who's listening because like, what is this guy talking about? But it's like having a piece of cake and trying to identify what your favorite ingredient in that cake was. Is it the eggs or yeast? I don't know if there's yeast in cake, flour. You know what I mean? Like, it's not complicated. So you kind of have to, you're still going to, like, you'll look at the simple mechanical things like backing off, but you'll also do things to build that person back up. Like my general heuristic is, calm shit down, build shit back up. That's it. So anything you can do that can help with your desensitization, that's worth doing. That's where you get weird treatments that don't always make sense. It could be like massage or manual therapy, and someone will say, oh, I'm breaking up fascial adhesions or something. You're not. But it certainly can be calming down your nervous system so you have less pain. And then you start running again and slowly, like building up your volume, and that builds you up so you can handle the running demands again. Or someone else says, I picked up some cross training. They started doing more elliptical, or they started strength training, and that helped for some reason, or Tai Chi. I'm like, good. So adding something helped you tolerate the demands of running. It's like, it's tough because I'm not being definitive here, but it's good in a way, because if you've been struggling with pain, it means that there's still hope, because there's lots of different things that can help you.
Well, I think potentially there I asked too big a question, right? Because when you said, we don't know, it's like, well, I've heard you talk, like I've followed your work for a long time, and I've heard you talk about all the reasons why. And I think what you really mean is, there's lots of, it's very complicated, some ideas, but we don't know the full story really on why other things influence pain.
Yeah. So like a good example, I'm having this debate on Twitter. It's a debate I've had forever is if you have knee pain or pretty much pain anywhere, if you do some sort of exercise somewhere else at a distance from that, everyone says you got to strengthen the glutes if you have knee pain. Sure. Pragmatically, that will help people. But it's also interesting, if you strengthen or do strength exercises for the hip adductors, so your groin or your hip flexors, that will help with knee pain, right? And so so it just seems like doing something else somewhere else. And you could also do the foot muscles. Like if you just strengthen your calf, those things will help. And then it turns out it may not be because you got stronger. Like we're doing strength exercises, so we just think, oh, you need to be stronger in order to run. Well, that's not really proven either.
Hmm.
It's just that you're doing some sort of exercise. So that exercise helps pragmatically. So we have like research that says these things help, but we don't have research that tells us exactly why they help. So we shouldn't confuse like ourselves thinking, oh, you have to get stronger. What we can say is, oh, you probably should do exercises somewhere else. There's a subtlety there.
Okay, so as a physio, I've certainly given glute exercises to people with knee pain.
Me too.
Right? So, and they have got better. And
Mhm.
potentially in my head, I tell a story, you know, their glutes were weak, their knee was going in, their glutes are now strong, their knee no longer goes in, their knee doesn't hurt. And I think what you're saying is that if you sort of go back to the start of that story and instead of strengthening the glutes, you strengthen the hip flexors, it
Yeah.
would sort of derail that story. But what you're saying is there's research that shows strengthening the hip flexors, so they pull their knee upwards, those muscles.
Yep.
That would help. Would it be equally as well?
Yeah.
And now our story doesn't make sense anymore. So there's got to be some other explanation for how these are helping with pain. Is that what you're?
That's it exactly. That's it exactly. Or what often happens is like people think it's strength, and why don't you could do like endurance exercises, and then that'll be just as helpful. Right. So that's fascinating to me because it just means that there's so many other options. Or if the principle is just train some other area, you can choose exercises based on some other goal, not thinking, oh no, I have to get the glute med stronger. You can choose an exercise because you enjoy it more, or for performance. Like I would actually, if you're a runner, I would advocate doing more hip flexor exercises for the performance related to running. Or if you're a female, because you'd be more predisposed to like bone density related injuries, I'd advocate doing some sort of exercise that's going to help your bone density. If you're a male as an athlete, you tend to like lose calf strength and tendon stiffness in your calf. So we'd say, well, let's choose exercises that are helpful for this because it's better in the long term. Do you know what I mean? Like you get to, it's great because you get to choose an exercise for another potential benefit. And then the side effect is that it helps pain.
And the exercise biomechanically doesn't have to explain why it would help with pain. So you don't have to go with the biomechanics. It's like, we know exercise helps with pain. It doesn't necessarily matter which exercise at which part of the body. I mean, could you go far away? Could you, have someone with knee pain, a runner has knee pain, and you get them doing shoulder pressing, right? Is that going to help them? Or
I know people have said that. I had someone just do pull-ups, but we were also doing hip stuff too. I was like, because there's this general analgesic effect for exercise that just occurs everywhere. And there's a general anti-inflammatory effect for exercise. So it might be, but I also think there's a psychology involved. And since pain is influenced by psychology, that might be a harder sell. It doesn't make sense. So like you may not be tapping into all the potential things that influence pain. So I would have trouble saying do shoulder presses for knee pain.
But I know people do. It reminds me, I heard, I've forgotten his name. Is it Neil Pearson, the Canadian pain?
Yeah, the yoga guy.
Yeah, so I was watching a lecture online, and he was talking about a study where they looked at people who were thirsty, and then they gave them a drink of water, and then they rated their thirst score, and it was lower immediately after drinking the water. And he's saying, well, they're not, it hasn't even got to their stomach yet, never mind their blood.
Sure.
But they're not thirsty anymore. And I remember the phrase he used was, they've taken the action that they needed to take to address the problem. So is that potentially why you and I would both be hesitant to give a shoulder exercise for knee pain? Because we have to have, okay, my hip was weak, my knee's caving in, my hip is now, do we need that narrative? Do people with knee pain need some sort of explanation? Could that be the mechanism for why the knee pain reduces, because they've taken the action needed to address the problem?
I think it's absolutely a huge thing related to it. It's why just like when you look at surgery studies where they have a sham surgery, there's no difference between the groups. They didn't actually do surgery, and both were effective. They helped a lot of people. So there's something huge there. And then and then this doesn't mean the pain is just in your head. Remember the way your brain works, it's the nervous system. It actually influences what happens at the level of the tissue. You can decrease sort of the sensitizing chemicals down at the knee when you feel hopeful or optimistic, or like what Neil said, or related to triathletes and runners, like Alex Hutchinson writes a lot about this. It's this, if you give someone, when you give them Gatorade when they're running, right? If they just swish it in their mouth and spit it out, so it never goes into their body, you'll see a change in the glucose in the bloodstream. So right, it's just like Neil's example.
Wow.
So it's done its
I
job.
didn't know that.
Yeah, that's an even better one.
Like I knew
Neil's
that they got a perception of that they felt more energetic. I knew that. I didn't know that the
physiological change. There's a physiological change. It's not just a perception. It's not just perceptual. There's an actual change in the physiology when you swish Gatorade around.
Could that be
the brain
a mechanism,
is predicting?
Right, for why the knee pain no longer hurts? Is some sort of physiological change around the knee, but it's because you've taken the action needed to address the problem, or at least you believe you have.
I think that's the idea. I still also believe that changing tissue and mechanical stuff is helpful as well. And so because I can't be sure, that's why I would advocate work on a number of things.
Right. So you're sort of covering all your bases.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the belt and suspenders approach to rehab. You don't want your pants to fall down. Got to have two backups here. Right.
Okay,